Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Build Computers. Today I'm going to show you how to make your very own Ghetto digital signs. Now these things are built out of deconstructed laptops, and I've literally stripped them down and hung them up in my windows, or even nailed them to the walls in some cases. And I have them just showing various movies or other web pages that I've built as signs and adverts for my shop. I get so many people asking me about them that I thought I'd actually show you guys how to make your own digital signs. All you need is a laptop that you're willing to part with. So the laptop I've chosen to make my digital sign out of today is this Asus X58 laptop. This was in my breaker pile as a laptop that is fully functional but worthless to me. I do refurb and resell second-hand laptops, but this one is running Windows Vista, which means it falls below my minimum requirements. It's too old basically. As you can see, it's an old 16 by 10 panel, so it's just not very desirable. However, it is in full working order, so it seemed a shame to throw it out. What we're going to do now is we're going to wipe it and install Ubuntu Linux on it, and that will give me a nice lightweight system that is easy to remotely access and also very quick. I have found that older laptops running Linux are consistently faster when you ask them to do HD video playback and stuff like that, because there's less going on in the background compared to Windows, even Windows XP, which itself is fairly lightweight these days. You can run Windows on your digital sign if you want. It's completely up to you, but I recommend a Linux installation, to be honest, just because it's more reliable in the long term. So we're going to go ahead and kick off this Linux installation. Okay, and off it goes. Now, I know you're probably desperate to get cracking with the fun bit, which is taking it all apart and everything, but I strongly advise getting all of your software setup done now while the laptop is still in one piece. Because once you've taken it all apart and we're working with bare circuit boards and LCDs laying on the table, it becomes really difficult to plug stuff into it. Okay, so we've got our basic Linux installation done. The next thing I'm going to do, because Ubuntu doesn't come with it preloaded, I'm going to start up Synaptic Package Manager and install Vino, which is a Linux VNC server. So close that and search for a Vino. Now, I'm going to manage this using VNC. There's a few configuration things we need to do to make this work. Because I'm going to be managing it from either macOS or Windows, although they support authentication, they don't support encryption on VNC, which isn't a problem for me because I don't care if someone can view me managing my digital screen. I don't do banking on it. However, it does mean that we need to switch off the encryption to make that work from non-Linux computers. And we're going to do gsettings, set org.gnome.vino, capital V, require encryption false. Wow, that's that. And now we're going to do Vino preferences, and we're going to switch that on. So allow others to view, allow them to control. We don't want to confirm it. We do require a password, just to stop anyone from being able to access and hijack my screens. And we always want to show the notification icon, because it's the only bloody way you can get to this preferences screen in Ubuntu without typing in the console command for some reason or other. And there's one more thing we need to do to get this remote support working. We need to go to the default applications for LX session, and we need to tell it to start remote desktop on startup. So let's just scroll to the bottom of this. Whoop. Desktop sharing, there it is. Turn that on. Okay, and we'll just give that a reboot now. And on reboot, we should find that we have a reliable connection. Okay, so now we've done the software setup on our laptop, it's time to take it to pieces. So we need to recover the LCD panel, the motherboard, and any other bits that are attached to those two that are required to make it work, which we'll find out when we get into it. So I'm going to tear this thing apart. I won't give you too much details on it because it's going to vary depending on what laptop you do. So here comes the fast forwardy bit. If you're not that familiar with taking laptops apart, then don't panic, because obviously you don't need to put this one back together again. So feel free to just literally undo everything in sight, and the laptop will just generally start falling apart. Okay, so that's our motherboard out. Now this motherboard is a pretty good shape. It's nice and wide and short, which is good for digital signs. Because as you can see, once we've got the cooling fan in place, it's actually about as wide as the display. So this will make something that's fairly nice and compact and will sit nicely. Additionally, it's also worth pointing out that we have got an SD card reader on this laptop. So if we wanted to, we could install Linux onto an SD card and run it from there. Personally, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to run it from the hard drive, which we'll just take out of this cage in a minute. So we'll have the hard drive floating, which kind of gets in the way, but that doesn't really matter. One thing we will need to work out though is we'll need to somehow secure the fan to the cooling radiator. And because we'll probably use this as one of the hanging points. But we'll come back to that in a moment. Firstly, what we need to do is just see if we can strip any more bits off of this just to lower the overall weight. We'll take out this card bus adapter, we'll try and take off this metal plate at the back, and we'll just take off anything else that doesn't really need to be on there. Then finally, again, if you also wanted to, we could recover the speakers from this bottom case and connect those up somewhere so the sign could have speakers and play sound. I'm not going to do that on mine because I keep mine silent, but if you wanted to, you can. It looks like this card bus adapter is not removable. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Right, so that motherboard is ready. Now we need to take the display assembly to pieces. So this again is just a matter of just taking out every screw in sight. Okay, now if like me you're doing this on an older laptop, it will probably have a fluorescent backlight. And a fluorescent backlight will be powered by an inverter, which is this fella down here. They're usually bigger and longer than this. They're normally about that long along the bottom. You need to make sure you recover this fella because we'll need it for the display to work. Okay, so there's our LCD display. We could also remove, well, these bars down the sides, they do come off, they will unscrew from the side, but I'm going to leave these on because as you can see, it's put holes down the side. Now these are perfect for running the string or wire that we're going to hang this from through. So I'm going to leave those on, and those are going to be our mount points. Now lastly, before I get rid of the display assembly, I'm also going to recover the wireless antennas from it. This is optional, however, if you run the computer with no wireless antennas connected, you'll find that it struggles to get a good signal even from across the room. So it's a good idea to try and recover at least one of the wireless antennas just so your wireless is vaguely usable. Okay, right, and that leaves us with an LCD and a motherboard. So the next thing you've got to do is work out how it's all going to connect back up again. So for me, the display connectors are here. Normally you only have one display connector, but on this one the inverter has a separate connector to the LCD, and those two both go together. And in addition to that, in relation to the laptop, the motherboard was originally upside down, so it would have been like that. But I want to look at the front of my digital sign and I want it to look interesting. So all the cool stuff, that's on the back of the board. So really I want to turn this board around. Unfortunately though, that puts these connectors the wrong way round. So I'm going to have to get a bit inventive. However, I can probably just turn these wires around and fit them in. Like that. Yeah, that's going to work. There we go. Right, those two are both plugged in now. And the cables will reach like that. So now we're starting to get a bit of an idea on what our digital sign is going to look like. And that's not too shabby actually, that's fairly compact. Again, we're going to have the hard drive hanging off the bottom here, but that's not a big deal, I'm okay with that. As I mentioned earlier on, we now need to figure out what we're going to do with the cooling fan, because we'll still need this fella. So that plugs in to there, and that's got to go on there. Now the great thing is, because this is Ghetto modding, we don't have to do any kind of fancy solution to this at all. And so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to zip tie that on. So I'm going to grab a couple of zip ties. I don't have any long ones unfortunately, so I'm going to pin some together. One cooling fan, job's a good one. And that's held firmly enough in place now that we can hang it from there. Which of course is kind of horrifying because that then puts the load onto these mount points here, but who cares? It's a crappy old laptop. It's one of the other reasons why I don't like doing with this with newer laptops, because old laptops are fun because you don't need to worry about them. Right, okay, and I'm going to, let me see, I'm going to stick these antennas on somewhere. Let's just connect those back up. There we go. Alright, so that's our digital sign ready to hang. Now at this point it's a good idea to start it up and make sure that the thing actually works. So let's get some power to this. Now in order to actually switch it on, we've got to figure out where the power button's gone. So on my one it's going to be one of these things on the back. On your laptop you might find that the power button is on some tiny little circuit board that hangs off of the top case. And the top case is this part here where the trackpad is. So in my case, these buttons here, those poke straight through. So if I vaguely line that up, I can see we've got two buttons and then a long button. So two buttons and then the one. So there's my power button. Your one, there might be a circuit board under that bit, which is on the back of here, and you have to take that off and attach it somewhere. So you've just got to figure that one out. In this case though, that's what I'm looking for. So I need to plug this in and push on the back. And there we go. It is now loading up the Ubuntu install that I've done. Right, and there's my remote access. So as you can see, I can now control this thing by remote. So what I'll probably do, I'll have a look around in my spare chargers and see if I've got a compatible charger that has a 90-degree connector on it. Failing that, in the worst case scenario, I could just angle this to go behind the screen when it's hanging up, and you know, it'll put the whole thing at an angle, but I've got other ones that are like that and it works out just fine once it's all hung up. Okay, now, because I'm going to mount my digital screen with a second one directly underneath it to make a double display, I have twisted mine all around so the motherboard is above the LCD. So if I turn this over, whoop, you can see how the LCD is that way up, and the cables I've twisted back round so the motherboard will be at the top. So this enables me to put the other one directly beneath it so the two screens are together. Now to do this, the display cable will just twist around like so, so that's no problem. However, the backlight power cable, I've had to make this little extension lead for it out of another LCD, a gross LCD panel and an old inverter wire. Now bearing in mind, if you do make any extensions like these, fluorescent backlights run on high voltage AC, like 1500 volts. Do not twist and tape connections like this, you must solder and insulate. These are soldered and then hot glued. If you don't do this, you run a serious risk of arcing across them. You will get sparks and jazzy stuff like that. So yeah, don't mess about with this end, make sure it's done properly. Now, with that warning out the way, we can go ahead and start planning our mounts. Now to hang it, I'm going to use ordinary string, which is plenty strong enough to hold it up, and also if it accidentally lays across the circuit board, that's not going to cause a problem either. And I'm going to run this string through the various holes in the existing mounts where the screws originally went. And the weight of the screen and the weight of the motherboard on those holes will hold it in such a way that it won't slip down. It's a very convenient method that is really easy to do. If you're particularly concerned, you could put some tactical knots or something like that in it, but I found that it's just not necessary. So I'm going to get my other screen in place and we'll thread the string through the whole shebang. once you've got to the end, we're just going to put a knot or a double knot in the string and then pull the excess back through. Right, once you've got your two sides strung up, make sure you leave a generous amount of excess on the end so you can actually hang it from somewhere higher up. I would say about just shy of a metre would probably do it, or 2 feet. Depends on how high up your hooks are going to be. Mine are not that long and this should be overkill, but better too much than too little. As you can see, we've got a length of string travelling right the way up both sides of our full rig, and I should now be able to lift the whole thing up just by pulling these two strings. So I'm going to move into an open space and let's see how that goes. Ooh. And there we have it. There is my full hanging double sign rig. Now, don't panic if yours is a little bit wonky. Some of these components are probably not straight. Once we've got it hung, we can then adjust the spacing just by gently moving the string up and down until everything is straight. The important thing is that the whole thing is all holding its own weight. So yeah, I'm now going to hang this from a couple of hooks that I've got, and then we can straighten it out and get it all wired up. Okay, so I've managed to get it hung, but it's all completely wonky at the moment. So now comes the adjustment stage. So we start at the top. Now this top motherboard is actually almost straight. I'm just going to adjust a few bits here. So I'm going to pull that bit through a bit and then let it drop to the bottom, and that will lift this side up. So that's now straight. Now this is obviously completely wonky, so we'll pull through this hole, and then again we'll just hold that in place and bring the slack through to the next hole. As you can see, that's now holding itself in place by its own weight, and we're just going to rinse and repeat as we move down the string. Now the only problem I've got is that I've got way too much slack at the bottom. So what I'm going to have to do is pull this slack through and then tie a new knot at the bottom. And that's it, we're all finished. Now if you're planning on using your digital signs in the sun like mine are here, you might find that the displays are a little bit dim. So my advice is to make sure you use high contrast stuff, black text on white backgrounds, or bright movies, things like that, so they're still visible in the daylight. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.